The late Dr. Martin Luther King famously said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." It's an important reminder in these troubled times. In this section, Arcing Toward Justice, we look at peace education for justice and human rights. We'll engage in a provocative session with Massimo Scagliati, head of legal department of the International Human Rights Council of the European Union, in conversation with Delia Mamon, founder and president of the Grande Paix Foundation, Geneva, and Jacob Johns, artist, activist, and executive director of the Wisdom Keepers Delegation. Then, Sierra Leone's Vicky the Poet delivers a powerful poetic indictment of war through the ages. Finally, we will enjoy the privilege of Maestro Juan Antonio Cimarro playing his renowned composition, Overture for Human Rights, performed by the Cruz Diez Orchestra and the Madrid Choir Association, and conducted by Manuel Jurado.
Next roundtable is about how does peace education promote human rights and justice, and this is very important, and how does it operate within these systems. Our chair for this session will be Massimo Scagliati, former prosecutor at the International Criminal Court. And please welcome our speakers, Jacob Johns, Risha Gupta, Muriel Henri Ricard, Vivian Shaima, and Shafiq Abdul Rahman.
First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Italian. My name is Massimo Scagliotti. I'm currently head of the legal department of the International Human Rights Council at the European Union. And I'm a former prosecuting attorney in international criminal courts and tribunals for many, many years. So as you can understand, I'm far from being an expert in the education field specifically, but I really hope that I can give a good contribution to these discussions by, in a way, making a step back. My experience has been essentially in the pursuit of justice, and through the pursuit of justice, pursuit of peace. So I think it can be really helpful to fine-tune and advance any idea regarding education process. I think it's helpful to just step back for a while and, at least from my professional experience, explore what are the factors that essentially stand on the way to peace. I think it's important to understand what, or rethink for a while, what the objectives of education peace can be. But first of all, let me introduce, I would like to turn to my esteemed colleague here, and so that they can introduce themselves, please.
Thank you, Massimo. My name is Delia Mamon. I'm the president and founder of Grande Paix Foundation, which is an NGO working from Switzerland, working to transform education for peace. So our work is more institutional. We are transforming the way teachers teach, in other words, teaching styles. We're transforming the way they organize the classroom to ensure dialogue between students all the time. A dialogue, collaboration, help, mutual help, reciprocity, all these beautiful values that are very important for us, for peace, and that can take place every day in a very normal way, just to learn French, math, English, whatever subject is the subject. But we also do further work because in the teaching style, there's a lot of violence. In Europe, and probably many developing countries, there's maybe no more physical violence, but there's enormous verbal and psychological violence and structural violence. And nobody thinks about this because it's invisible.
Thank you very much. Excellent. I'm sure that with your professional background, this is exactly what can, I think, complement the kind of contribution that I can give. So thank you very much for this.
My name is Jacob Johns. My traditional name is Hohohet Baya, means looking for arrows or reeds to turn into arrows, and then also shooting arrows to go look for them. I'm a community support organizer as well as an artist. Community support organizer makes me a solo nonprofit group. I've been doing intersectional organizing for the past 7 years, as soon as Trump was elected first time. I have a background organizing for political action committees in the United States, but which brought me to working on environmental bills and issues domestically, which for those of us who work in environmental protection understand there's obstacles over and over and over again working domestically. But as I started working internationally for climate, it's important to understand the science tells us that the time for small increment steps taking domestically has passed us, and that the science shows us that we need to take a giant quantum leap into the future together as one planet. So I organize a project called A Wisdom Keepers Delegation, which is a delegation of indigenous wisdom keepers from around the planet who come together to co-create indigenous wisdom that can be distilled into contemporary climate policy that we advance underneath the umbrella of the UNFCCC. So if you see me a little bit exhausted, I just came back from COP in Baku, where we spent 3 weeks with 18 delegates advancing contemporary climate policy.
Thank you very much, Jacob. Okay, let's try now to go into the first issue. And like I said, I'll make an introduction about, of course, drawing on my professional experience. And then I will turn to my colleagues that they will be able to go more deeply into the core issue that we are discussing now. I was saying I've been a prosecuting attorney for many years. And so my experience is in trying to pursue peace through justice. Now, let's make a little step back. How is peace pursued through justice? Traditionally, peace builders use more the different tools, like accommodation of the needs of the parties to a conflict, or use of force. That was traditionally done. But only in the 90s, justice came into place. And as you probably know, a number of ad hoc tribunals and courts were created. The objectives of this prosecution, of course, are, first of all, the retribution, because obviously the message, and those who commit those horrible crimes that are defined as shocking humanity have to pay a price to the community, to the society, to God, for those who believe in God. Anyway, this is the concept of retribution. But more importantly for our discussion, the objective is also to try to stop ongoing conflicts. Maybe you heard when the violence during conflicts escalates, prosecutors make an announcement, making it clear that they are monitoring the violence. So they are sending a sort of warning, saying we are keeping a close eye on you, and those who are committing these atrocities will be held responsible, accountable to the justice system. And third, and we are getting probably even closer to our issue, the objective is deterrence of further crimes. Meaning, again, the justice system has to send a message worldwide saying that those who commit those crimes will not go unpunished. Now, in my professional experience, if I have to say, what are in the achievement of these objectives, what are the main obstacles? And I think I would like to emphasize a concept that so far I haven't heard. And to me, the concept is propaganda. Political propaganda plays really a key role because propaganda operates not only before a war, creating the conditions, but also after the war. The effects, the consequences of propaganda continue. And I will try to make, to be clear. Let's take, for instance, the example of the Rwandan genocide. It's something that unfortunately and sadly many know. And of course, there was let's say, an historical basis for propaganda to operate, because the two groups, the Hutus and the Tutsis, there was a perception through generations that they were conflicting groups. But of course, then in the years preceding the genocide, a massive campaign that was orchestrated was able to turn thousands. They calculate 130,000 civilians who actively participated in the massacres. So along obviously the army, the militia, 130,000 apparently ordinary people turned into massive killers. So that, including children, of course, including elderly people, including nobody, I mean, anybody, no matter what the age or gender was. This is an example of what propaganda can achieve. And another example that I can draw on from my professional experience, I worked at the International Criminal Tribunal for former Yugoslavia for a number of years. And, well, of course, justice made its course, because the UN Security Council set up this tribunal that, from a judicial point of view, well, there are many views on the legacy of the tribunal. Of course, we don't enter into this. It's nothing to do with our subject. But anyway, from a point of view of justice system, the International Criminal Tribunal made its work, its job. Nevertheless, after the war, I had the chance in my capacity to talk to children who were living not far from Sarajevo. I'm talking about a distance of maybe 30 kilometers. They were living in a Serbian area. They were Serbs. And they were refusing to visit Sarajevo, which was basically the capital there. But they were absolutely refusing to go. And why? Because they were saying it's a Muslim city. We don't go. So what is the lesson learned? That justice alone, and I mean, it's my job, but I have to acknowledge justice alone is absolutely, as much as it is important, it's not sufficient. Because, and this is a clear example, the seeds of violence, of hatred, were still there. And I'm talking about very young children, they were not even aged school at the time. But the problem is that in their families, the hatred was passed on from those who were adults at the time, and it was passed on to the children. So the seeds of hatred were still there. And that's where I think education really comes into place. Because if we want to create generations of young people who understand that hatred, violence is not the way ahead, it's not going anywhere, this is where education really definitely comes into play. And I would like to conclude my first intervention sharing with you another story that I heard, which is really touching in my view. Again, I was still at the ICTY, International, the Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, and I had the chance to meet a war reporter. This war reporter was in Sarajevo during the siege. So he had the chance to talk to the father of a very young child who was shot and killed by a sniper during the war. Obviously, during the siege, people at some point had to live normal life. They couldn't stay in shelter all day long, especially children. They also had theaters activity. They had to live their life in a way. So children were playing on the street, and the sniper shot and killed this child. And so the war reporter asked, if you want a kind of obvious or even silly question to this man, so the war reporter asked the father, if you had the chance to talk to the man, to the sniper who killed your son, what would you do? If you had the chance, what would you do to him? And you know what the answer was? This man said, oh, simply, I just would like to sit down with him, have a coffee together, and ask him why you shot my son, why you did it. This for me was really touching, and I think I would like to really draw your attention on this example, on this extraordinary example, in my view, of this father. I think this is something that probably goes beyond human capability in my views. But at least I think it's something really to keep in mind that should inspire the difficult process of peace education. And I'll pass it on to my colleagues to dig further into the issue, please.
So what we do today is we teach teachers both in Switzerland, sometimes neighboring France, and in certain countries in Africa on how to teach without violence. And in the beginning, they are resistant, so the arms are crossed like this, and what you we help them focus on the child and what is going to help the child grow and develop and be fulfilled. And we show them that if they need to have authority, there are much better ways, much more effective ways of showing authority than by punishing violently or by saying something that is belittling or insulting. And truly, I have collected information from children. Every time I meet a child, I ask, of course, a lot of questions. And I have children who have told me that when I raised my hand, the teacher told me, put your hand down. You're the one who never understands anything. Yes. Or you have nothing between your two ears. Or go wash your ears. I mean, we don't realize, the man who said it, the teacher, he thought he was doing his profession. He thought he was helping the whole classroom keep the speed. So he was convinced he was doing right. He was not trying to be mean. He was just angry that someone was interrupting the flow. We're completely changing that. We're helping teachers connect with the children with their eyes, with their words, with the sound of their voice. And we're helping them go beyond tolerance, beyond respect, beyond kindness, because those three things are not enough. And we're helping them go to consideration. Consideration is something the child can feel. Respect is cold, it's neutral, let's say. And tolerance is pushing away. We have this idealistic view of tolerance, but it was okay after the war because it was the minimally required. And now we've gone to the mode that, respect is key. And it's not enough. And then in education, we brought in kindness, and this is a very fashionable word right now, but kindness doesn't bring firmness. So we need consideration and firmness. This is one of the parts that we teach. And the second thing that we teach is how to organize the classroom, as I was saying. Right now, even today, in 2024, children are sitting in rows unless they're in kindergarten. And sitting in rows, what does that mean? That they never see each other. They only see the teacher and the blackboard. Maybe they'll see the child who is asked to go to the blackboard. And this does not create connectiveness, connection, appreciation of each other, learning how human beings act and react. So they are totally without knowledge of the human being because we're putting them in rows for 40 hours or 35 hours a week. It's not smart. And nobody's coming up with better ideas except a little bit in Finland, for sure, in Canada, and maybe in other parts of Scandinavia. But in Switzerland, France, the US has gone backwards in education. We don't see this group learning happening, and it needs to happen from the age of 4 to the age of 18 and onwards. And let's not talk about university. When I studied in university, we were 1,200 here in Paris at the medical faculty for a room that was for 800. So we're just sitting on steps and nobody could hear anything. And basically we had to study at home. So that what we learn, what do we learn? What do children learn when they're sitting and around 2 to 3 to 4 children max around the table, or if it's in Africa, pivoting towards the row behind, which is another solution when you are stuck in rows that are pre-built and you can't even move the chair because it's a bench. And even that works. And children learn to see each other, to realize that there's emotions, that they have emotions, and that the other one has emotions. So they're learning the social emotional skills. They're learning reflection skills, because when they're put in groups, you don't study the same way. You need to reflect and share what your reflections are. And you need to listen and give space to each person. So you're learning respect and consideration. And you're learning to help each other. So you're learning reciprocity. And you're learning many more things. So that's the 2 basic tenets. And I'll leave that now to speak, and I'll speak more about what we can do later.
Thank you very much for this and your action. Yeah, we'll develop on the third issue. A very interesting point. Please, Jacob.
Yeah, thank you so much. Earlier, I was talking a little bit about, being the victim of gun violence in the U.S. and touching on and echoing what he was saying about propaganda. Is that, especially in my country, that the society is divided, that there is this huge disconnect from people. And, propaganda machines create these false realities for people to act in violence and to lash out at those who they perceive as being opposite. I think one of the things that we can do in order to transcend is, once again, education. A lot of people who take strong standpoints on historical things aren't fully educated on what took place. Everybody's propaganda creates a skewed version of reality. So I can speak a little bit about what took place. Is that the local indigenous community was protesting, and they were having a prayer vigil in order to stop a statue that they were going to re-erect of a conquistador who did horrible things to the people of that land. He was known for rounding up all of the men, 800 of them, and cutting off their right foot, maiming a whole generation. And this government locally in the U.S. wanted to put a statue up right there in the homeland of these indigenous people, honoring this man who cut off their foot. And it was a disgusting slap in the face. It brought up a lot of intergenerational trauma. And this is from the Spanish conquistadors, not from the American government. This is how long these people have been dealing with colonial forces. And, back in 1680, the Pueblo people, which my tribe Hopi is part of, had an uprising where they had got together. A spiritual leader had this vision of uprising against the Spanish, who were trying to wipe away our traditional ways of life. And it was from this uprising that allowed the Pueblo people to maintain their traditional thoughts and their traditional religions. And so when they asked me to come, my cousins, the Pueblo cousins, to come and stand with them, to pray with them, and to hold vigil all night, I agreed. And in the morning, these people showed up, and they were pro-conquistador. And they had this skewed version of reality that this genocide somehow should be honored. And that these people who were praying for logic, and these people who were praying for a peace to be brought to the community without having to honoring genocidal maniacs, was answered. The idea that we pray and we give all this energy for something positive to find peace and closure was achieved. And this violence that erupted out of this oppositional forces was brutal. And after being killed, being shot, and there was a whole lot of things that fell through, I was instructed that I needed to continue to do the work that I was doing, which was uniting a group of indigenous wisdom keepers from around the world. Previously, before I had gone to New Mexico, I traveled with a group of these indigenous folks to sacred places around the planet, to key places, including the North Pole, Mount Shasta, the Azores, Egypt, China, the South Pole, Australia. We went to all of these key places in order to pray for humanity and really unite the world in prayer. And this idea of us being peace being abstract and peace being something that's undefinable, doesn't really resonate with me, because this idea of the world coming together with prayer, with passion, is the embodiment of peace. We are looking for, how do we engage peace? How do we do this? How do we find peace? It reminds me of a fish that's swimming in the ocean looking for water. that we are peace, that it's all around us, and that we must embody that. And when there are violence and there is emotional outrage and emotional turmoil and societal collapse and all these crazy things that are all around us, it's important for us to rise above and to find logic and not meet emotion with emotion, but rise above and really embody that which we truly need. And when we talk about peace, we really need to be in these spaces and not just talk about it, sending thoughts and prayers, but to actually be in the spaces and to unite our hearts and unite our minds. And one of the things I was told on the other side is that there will be small groups of people who will resonate and vibrate a specific frequency. And as those people go into their communities, they will find other like-minded people, and the resonation will continue around the globe until we are reunited once again through frequency, through thoughts, through prayers, and more importantly, through action. And I think that action itself is something that's very important. And so how do we find closure? How do we find peace in a chaotic world? How do we do this? How do we move forward when the science is telling us that everybody in the world is screwed? How do we look at the face of our children and tell them that we tried all we could and good luck to everything? That the truth is that we do have hope, that there is a possibility, there is a way out. And as somebody who recently came back into this life, I'm here to tell you that we are at the highest possible vibration. And then when we talk about justice, we talk about peace, we must focus on the environment, because the destruction of the environment is something that is parallel to the destruction of societies around the planet. And that these oppressive systems that are trying to put a chokehold and a strangle on our youth and the future of humanity, that we must rise above and recognize these oppressive systems being more violent and dictators all around the planet, that we must recognize it for what it is. The death rattle of outdated ways of living, the death rattle of paradigms that no longer fit humanity, and that we must celebrate these people who are being aggressive and violent as them recognizing this new world of peace, this new world of hope, this new world that we all embody. And as I've traveled around the world, it makes more sense for us to not just talk about it and sending thoughts and prayers, but really put our thoughts and our hearts and our minds together to find ways that we can distill our indigenous wisdom, not just domestically, but globally, and embody that into contemporary climate policy that we can advance by changing the hearts and minds of world leaders. And this is how we do it. We come into spaces, we find hearts and minds with people from around the planet who join together to embody that which we truly desire. And it's not without reach. It's around us, just as the fish searching for water, swimming in the ocean. And this, I think, is a way for us to evolve. That we should celebrate this pivotal moment in history as a time of turning and a time of embracing the peace that we truly desire by just being.
Thank you again, Jacob, for this contribution. Thank you again. And at some point you touched upon a very important point in my view. What propaganda can achieve. And when propaganda is effective, one of the strong points is really to dwell on these distorted collective memories, historical narratives. And that's where education comes into play. Because these distorted transmission of facts must stop. And I think that's where education should play a key role, definitely. I think we can now move to the second issue, which is how we can expand the good initiatives, how we can expand education programs. I can say just a few general things, and then I will pass on to my colleagues who are more into the field. But first of all, I think one important consideration to me, and this is really a very general observation, I think peace education should start with a different perspective, especially talking about our Western societies, where the focus is constantly on individual rights. Now, of course, individual rights is important, obviously. But we tend to forget, and the predominant culture definitely doesn't help in that sense. We only think about our rights, but we never think that we also have obligations and responsibilities. And that's why we can enable other people to benefit of their rights. And this is a concept really key. It's not just about peace education. It's something that goes through all aspects of society. Second, I think it's also important to highlight that peace education can be seen in two different ways. Just peace education as an absence of violence, of war, but there is also a much more profound concept, which is peace in a positive way, meaning peace as a situation of harmony. Not simply we don't fight, but we are in harmony. We are in a situation of justice, fairness, equality. And this is something also I think should be emphasized. And finally, well, of course, I think it's essential to promote a culture in which, first of all, tolerance of diversity is a pillar. But then the difficult part, I think, is really, and then we'll see something that you were introducing before, how you make sure that this tolerance of diversity becomes something real in daily life, not just in a subject which is taught, I don't know, a couple of hours a week. Teaching children a rule of law culture, meaning understanding from children, from being children, that society can only operate if there is a system of rules which are complied with. And finally, I think also it's important to stress that peace education should be more than a subject or the result of a number of subjects in a curriculum. It should really be an approach to life, an approach in all the aspects of knowledge and teaching. Just some general preliminary remarks, and I'll pass it on to my colleagues, please.
Well, I'll hire you. Because why? Because this is exactly what we're saying. We don't do peace education because I don't believe in this 2-hour-a-week course. I'm thoroughly against it, and I think if I were a child, I'd be bored to death. And I just remember how we studied civic education in France, and I can tell you how bored to death I was. And I'm such a motivated person for such issues. So if I'm a motivated person and it bores me, that means it's not the right approach. I thoroughly believe that it's a way of being inside the classroom by the students and by the teacher. So this is corroborating with everything that we've heard today. It's a way of being. And a way of being, well, to practice a way of being, it makes it concrete, and it's happening all the time because as soon as we start interacting, we're learning peace. Because in the beginning, it's not working, where we do it we don't do it well. We're clumsy, and little by little, we become a polished stone, and we become better and better on the condition that we're interacting. And we're interacting with people of different views, of different backgrounds, of different thoughts, different parents, different countries. And it's happening more and more. There are some positive things in this world, is that we're more and more in a diverse society, and this is incredibly positive. It's not positive when everybody's going into polarized mode, but it's very positive when the school structure, the school classroom, takes away all this polarization by putting people of different groups together, because children don't think that polarized, even if their parents try and give them this polarized perspective. But in the classroom, they're experiencing something different, and they bring it back to home. This is very important. We have parents telling us, "What did you do to my child?" All of a sudden, he's playing with his brothers and sisters in a way that I've never seen before, where they're sharing and they figure out how to share, who uses which gift, which game, when. And this is all about learning collective behavior. So that's the one thing I wanted to say. And the second thing Maybe I'll say it on the third, there's a third, I'll say it on the third one.
Actions.
Yes, the action. But I would like to come back to the question of, is it concrete or is it abstract? So my first work, when I started this NGO 20 years ago, 19 and a half years ago, I started with this question: why is there no peace in the world when there are diplomats, there's law, there's constitutional law, there's human rights law, there's schools, there's universities. Never have there been so many universities around the globe. So in countries that were very underdeveloped, there were universities with 15,000, 30,000 students. I'm thinking of Sudan, for example, at once upon a time. What makes it that was missing? And for me, the immediate answer that came to my mind is that we lack two things. We don't share values and we don't share skills, or we don't have the skills. We're not taught skills. And this is what I liked about one of the speakers this morning, who said that we teach children to have economic integration, but we don't teach children to have social integration. But by putting them together and working and studying together, they learn social integration without even knowing the terms. They don't need the terms. They can just do it. It's so concrete and it's so effective. So that's my last.
Yeah, we, really focusing on the future, I think is important. We already know and recognize that the present moment is not the most peaceful. And when we think about the future, especially when we are met with such negative points of view, that we have to breathe. And I think that's really important, to not be inundated with negativity consistently, which is all around us. It's really easy to be pessimistic in spaces where the power holders are, or where science is. There's a lot of different things, and we are literally heading towards a cliff, and it's more and more present. We were at the Conference of the Parties, COP29. It was my fifth COP, working internationally for advancing climate policy internationally. We understand that in order for us to find peace, we must reconnect humanity to the truth that we are all from the same place, that all of us have ancestral ties to ancestral wisdom that connected you to the land. And colonization and capitalism has taught you that you are separate from nature. And we are taught that we can extract our own Mother Earth for resources in order to build a capital. We think that we can trade one community's health for another. And when we talk about ancestral wisdom and bringing back these traditions and these ways of living in harmony with nature, living in harmony with the land, that we have to find ways to advocate for that contemporarily. And one of the things is really, really important that is working for us, I can say for A Wisdom Keepers delegation, is that we are truly this embodiment of so many prophecies that have been taught by all of our traditions worldwide. That this is a pivotal moment in time and in history. This year we raised a lot of money. We sent people to have an in-person gathering in Washington State, where I live, and then we also sent a group to the subsidiary body meetings in Bonn, Germany, to do reconnaissance on the policy and how it would how we could take the high-level negotiations and then disseminate them down as if you were explaining to a 5-year-old, but across 5 different languages, and then try to facilitate a way that would accurately convey consensus built from the group that we could codify into climate policy platforms that we advance with these leaders globally who are making trade deals on our behalf. And when we talk about peace, this is how we do it. We try to be as equitable and as just as possible, and that we must uplift those voices that don't have a voice in spaces of power. And this idea of us coming together, not just as a large NGO, but as just one single person who, was running through my fiscal sponsorship, was able to facilitate this. And after all the money that I've raised in order to pay honorariums for people, to pay organizers for their time, to pay for our media team, none of the money that I raise actually goes to my own self. It all goes to just do this work. I raise this money just so that the work can be done, because I 100% believe in this. And we have to unite as humanity. And I can tell you that when our global family comes together, much like the residents here in this room, that we truly embody that which we truly desire. We're not chasing after something that's without reach, that we are physically that in these spaces. And that the frequency that you emanate is the same frequency that I emanate. And when you look at other people and you think, what an amazing person, what a well-spoken, what an amazing, talented person these folks are, that humanity is merely a reflection of yourself. My tradition speaks of a time where the world will shift from the lower level energy into a higher level energy, where we emerge from a lower level into a heart-centered consciousness. And the idea to prepare for this upcoming world, this world that is already currently around us, is to stop seeing each other as separate. When we look into the eyes of another, recognize that you are merely a reflection of them and they are a reflection of you. And that when you hear the sound of nature, you hear the sound of the rain falling, and you feel the wind, that this is also a representation of you, that you are an embodiment of the planetary consciousness, and that nature itself lives in harmony, and that you are that harmony.
We are coming now to the final part of this session, so the Q&A. We can take just a few questions because we are really running late. Please, 2-3 questions from the audience.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to share something about practical things in the justice space. So the peace education program I mentioned, we are we've been in 900 prisons, correctional spaces, and probation and parole. What the people going through the program say is, when I get to know myself, if I had known this before, I wouldn't be where I am. It's not just them. The people who have been at the receiving end of that criminal act, they can find peace in themselves when they understand that the strength that they have from recognizing their own humanity. And we talk about reconciliation. And through the peace education program, reconciliation hasn't just happened at an individual level where someone's been a victim of crime, but actually in places like Colombia, where the FARC have been involved. This is a big gang and a political entity that has historically terrorized, but also in Sri Lanka with the rebel fighters, with the Tamil and the Sinhalese. The peace education program has actually helped catalyze a dialogue in the society at the grassroots level, where people can come together and recognize their humanity. And so there's something about coming back to a tangible peace in understanding who you are, but at the grassroots level, it's not just these dimensions of having laws and things, but actually the rehabilitation that happens within the person when they understand their own humanity and they can see the humanity in the other person, despite the atrocity that has been inflicted on each other. That's where our program has actually had a significant amount of success. There are many more stories I can tell you about, but I wanted to bring that to this space of talking about peace and justice.
Thank you very much, really helpful. Thank you for this. Next question.
Yeah, I'm very interested in kind of the legal aspect of human rights and just peacemaking and peace education. And I just kind of wanted to hear maybe your perspective on how would be a good way or like an effective way to balance sovereignty with international human rights and peace education obligations, kind of, if you have like an insight on that.
Well, yes, there is a very clear answer. Well, what can I talk about this from my experience, especially in the justice system? So we are talking not about human rights tribunals where you go and you make a complaint against the state for something which is more of a private issue, but we are talking about your criminal justice. And there is a mechanism in place which is in that sense perfect in reconciling state sovereignty and justice. And the answer is the complementarity principle, because the mechanism which is in place now is the following. Jurisdiction is, first of all, to state authorities. So it's a paradox if you want, but if national justice system works functionally, the International Criminal Court will be absolutely with their job. They will be doing nothing. Because, like I said, in first instance, the jurisdiction is for the states. Of course, there are two requisites. Number one, the court intervenes when as it happens in many, for instance, in many African countries, after the conflicts, clearly the justice system is completely collapsed. So the states are not able to conduct investigation, prosecution, and to have effective criminal proceedings. This is one. And the second condition is when states are unwilling. So either they take no action or they clearly put in place sham criminal proceedings. That's where when the International Criminal Court comes into play. So as you can see, it's a perfect balance because there's no interference. If states do their job and take their responsibilities, they have full sovereignty. I think this answered your question.
Hi, Michel Lavolée. I'd like to make additional points to your answer, because we do also have the experience of Médecins Sans Frontières and Médecins du Monde from the Biafra initial intervention to the right to intervene, which was actually brought to the UN, is accepted when local situations become unacceptable. And that what triggers your role as the ICC. And I think it's important to note that there are very strong references to that process as in between, what the government does becomes unacceptable. Abuses, violations, killings, it opens the door to a space that NGOs can actually use. And if I could add a point about the education systems that Delia was referring to, I'm a pure product of the French system. I have suffered all my life, but I like to differ on the fact that there are other methods that have been introduced, even in France, and that are growing and growing and growing, like Montessori. It exists, and it is a different method. There are many Montessori schools in Geneva and in neighboring France where I live, and those show that it's possible.
I thoroughly agree. There's many beautiful initiatives right now, and they're grassroots initiatives, not from on top.
Thank you very much. I think we are at the end of this session. I really would like to thank my colleagues for their precious contributions and the audience for paying attention to us. Thank you very, very much.
We have Vicky the poet, who is going to do a poem for us live from Sierra Leone. Do we have her available? You guys need to cue her up.
Hello.
Hello. We miss you here. We wish wish we could see you in person, but it's so great to see you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Please share us your poetry.
Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Vicky the Poet. I'm from Freetown, Sierra Leone. It's an honor to be here with all of you, and I'm excited to perform my poem entitled The Chronicle of Peace. And I want to welcome you to what promises to be an exciting and enriching experience. And I am thrilled to have such a dynamic group of professionals, experts, and innovators gathered here. Please sit, relax, and enjoy as I perform my poem.
Thank you.
War darkens the sun. It spits poison upon the atmosphere and ends life before ever it begins. It melts concrete dreams into fragile elements and barren hopes. It's that parasite that turns solid achievements into dark ashes and smoke. War has the habit of blowing into oblivion the beauties of life. This man-made construct has the reputation of wiping out civilization across the face of the earth. It was war that turns ancient Greece into ruins and debris. The beauty of ancient Rome was maimed by the furnace of war. 100 years of war between the Brits and the French wrenched the European continent in a dark cocoon of destruction. First and Second World War have etched dark tales written on dark ink, on dark pages, usually told during the darkest night. Wars across the Middle East, like beasts conjured from the underworld, is devouring lives, trampling on innocent dreams, and spitting fire on harmless souls. But peace of a resilient society, it is the sun that lights our day, the moon that brightened the pathway during the dark night, and it is that star that should be gazed upon to guide our adventure of living. Peace is the thread that stitches the rough edges of diversity, and it is the crest of thriving society. Rather than we wish only for the dead to rest in peace, we should also learn to fan our urge to live in peace and dwell in peace. It should be a burning desire to lay these building blocks and embalm its existence in the tomb of tranquility. Let's cement this idea of preaching peace whilst watering its seed in the garden of love. Wailing cries from the innocent blood spilled on the altar of FGM are barricades and hurdles of peace. My uneducated friends who are trapped in child marriage are constantly fighting a war infused with emotional torture. And to them, the word peace is just a ghost, buried long ago in a graveyard in the heart of Ghost Town. Poverty and peace are incompatible. Discrimination and peace do not sit and dine in the same table. With inequality, the nature of peace and its ways will remain unstable. Amplify my voice and other voices buried in the wilderness of wasteland. Let our voices be heard across and over the Pacific. And let the disciple of my punchline echoes on the top of Mount Everest. Embalm my poems with natural salt on the ice of Antarctica. Let these words edge from my lips, stand tall like the Eiffel Tower. Because peace and education for its global embrace, like the right of life, is non-negotiable rights. Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Juan Simuro shares the magic of his music with us as a volunteer and even contributes his expenses. This kind of dedication and generosity from people like him, like you and me, is what makes it possible for the Global Peace Education Network to do our work. People like all of us are the sponsors of this free global conference. We invite you to visit our website and pitch in what you can.